After dipping their toes in the hobby waters the year before, 1960 Fleer baseball cards expanded the company's footprint with collectors. Moving on from that 1959 Fleer Ted Williams set that only featured the Splendid Splinter, aside from a couple of cameos, the newcomer took on all-time greats in a set deemed fittingly baseball greats. While licensing kept Fleer away from current players other than Williams, they made do with an 80-card offering of the most legendary names from the game's past. Retired players are never as popular as current guys in any given particular set, but these most valuable 1960 Fleer baseball cards kept collectors interested even today. Rankings gleaned from PSA 7 card values as listed in the PSA Sports Market Report price guide. Play ball! 1960 Fleer Babe Ruth, number 3. How could anyone but the greatest player of all time appear in this slot? They couldn't, that's how. And even if you think some dudes have surpassed Ruth in terms of production or talent in more recent decades, he has lapped the field several times over when this card was issued. So yeah, this Babe card paces 1960 Fleer at $110 in PSA 7. 1960 Fleer Ted Williams, number 72. Not far behind Ruth is the guy who many consider to be the best pure hitter ever. That Williams has a strong association with the company by virtue of the famous 1959 Fleer set dedicated to the Red Sox slugger doesn't hurt anything either. All told, you can expect to pay about $100 for a graded near-mint copy of the 1960 Fleer Ted Williams card. 1960 Fleer Lou Gehrig, number 28. There were still plenty of fans following the game in 1960 who remembered the great Gehrig with the Yankees, as well as his tragic downward spiral, moving farewell speech at Yankee Stadium, and ultimate death. Today, the Iron Horse remains one of the most legendary players to ever lace up a pair of Major League spikes, and his 1960 Fleer card lines up at about $70 in PSA 7. 1960 Fleer Ty Cobb, number 42. Cobb's legacy was perhaps still even more in your face than was Gehrig's in 1960, as the Detroit Tigers fireball would live another year until July 1961. The man that fans seem to either love or hate is inarguably one of the greatest hitters and fiercest competitors the game has ever known, and his cards enjoy strong collector interest all these years later. The Georgia Peach checks in here at $55 in PSA 7. 1960 Fleer Nap Lejeway, number 1. Lejeway scored the first card here and stands as one of the great players from the early decades of the 20th century. Like HONUS Wagner and his famous T206 card, all of Lejeway's cards get a boost from his mega-scarce 1933 Gaudy issue. In this case, that translates to a $25 price tag in PSA 7. 1960 Fleer CHRISTY MATHEWSON, number 2. Mathewson was one of the first superstar pitchers in the majors, and he maintains that status more than a century after his 1916 retirement. Today, his 1960 card is a $20 buy in PSA 7 condition. 1960 Fleer Walter Johnson, number 6. And speaking of superstar pitchers, Walter Johnson is generally acknowledged as the greatest hurler of all time. And you may get some arguments based on the limited talent pool of his era, but Big Train has always been a super popular figure in the game and hobby. His 1960 Fleer card hammers down for about $20 in PSA 7 today. 1960 Fleer Bob Feller, number 26. Feller was just a few years removed from the end of his legendary career with the Cleveland Indians when this card was issued. Having retired in 1956, Feller would make the Cooperstown cut in 1962 and has been a hobby staple for 70 years. His 1960 Fleer card sells for around $20 in PSA 7 today. 1960 Fleer Cy Young, number 47. Young, of course, was the big name in Hall of Fame pitchers by virtue of his 511 career victories and the yearly Top Hurler award named after him. While Young made his hay in a completely different world, even modern collectors chase his cards. Today, his 1960 Fleer issue is a $20 buy in slabbed near-mint condition. 1960 Fleer Jamie Foxx, number 53. Double X was one of the first guys not named Babe Ruth to jack up big home run numbers, reaching a peak of 58 in 1932 for the Philadelphia A's. Though Fox never topped any of Ruth's homers records, he was an early member of the 500 home run club and still stands as one of the greatest power hitters ever. In PSA 7, this is another $20 card. 1960 Fleer HONUS Wagner, number 62. Of course, every Wagner card feels a little special because of his T206 is such a hobby heavyweight that its tentacles impact some magic to each cardboard kin. One of the first truly great shortstops, Wagner lands near the top of the value list for any set where he appears, and his 1960 Fleer is no different. Expect to pay $20 for the Flying Dutchman in PSA 7 condition. 1960 Fleer Carl Hubbell, number 4. Hubbell was a pitching superstar for the New York Giants throughout the 1930s, with a few extra years tacked on both the 1920s and the 1940s. His most famous moment, though, came in the 1934 All-Star Game when he struck out 5 future Hall of Famers in a row. Hubbell mowed down Ruth, Gehrig, Fox, Al Simmons, and Joe Cronin in a succession. It made him a legend in an instant and a swagger he never lost. King Carl's 1960 Fleer is a $15 card in graded near mint condition. Like our video? Then like our videos and subscribe to our channel. waxpackgods.com